he qualified to do this? Well, he's kind of smart, I think, and I can say that as his wife. He was an F-18 pilot, a commander in the Navy, and his last operational job, actually before we moved elsewhere, was he was the strike operations officer for the Persian Gulf. And that was the whole kind of last half of his career. He was basically planning and executing disasters. So it's kind of funny that we're here today talking about the opposite. And he has a foundation, Fuse Trilogy and Disaster Prepping for Dummies. And to create those, he's gotten a really great board of advisors. And I tell you that because, you know, you talk about how you gather good information, and you are like the people you hang with. And so he's got a great group of advisors that include astrophysicists, astronauts, an admiral, an AI expert, meteorologist, a CIA agent, Mossad agent, and a pastor. So he's got a lot of background and a lot of good people who are advising him. And I think you're going to really enjoy some things that he has to tell today. So without further ado, I want to welcome my sweet husband, Dave Stevens.
All right. She covered the background, educational background, etc. But really, you know, you think, why am I qualified? Oh, you need a little louder? Yes. Why am I qualified? The bottom line is, when you're talking about disaster preparation, that spans so many different areas of expertise. We're talking meteorology, geopolitics, as she's mentioned, artificial intelligence, nutrition, human psychology, law, self-defense. So nobody can be an expert in all of those. It's impossible. And having a team makes a big difference. In fact, my technical editor, his name is Brian Duff. He's actually a decorated Army Ranger with extensive combat experience. But even here in the community, there's plenty of expertise. In fact, I want to embarrass and point out Travis Riley back there. If you wave your hand, this guy has decades of experience in the topic, especially things like homesteading. So if you have advanced questions, he's your man. But just as a quick check, anybody who's been either is or has been a first responder, military, medical, fire, or police, would you raise your hand? So we've got a number of people in the crowd. What I'm saying is the community has a tremendous amount of experience and background that we can all tap. Now, by the way, I know these disaster prep books are not cheap. Dummies books are expensive. What you may not know is the digital version is about 40% less. And if this helps, the royalties are about $1.33 per book. If you order, what I'm going to do is anybody who has one with them, or if they pick one up in the next 10 days or so, there's an email in the back of the book. I'm going to donate $10 towards this church. This church has incredible outreach programs. And the churches in general tend to be the fastest to have boots on the ground when there's disaster recovery. I think everybody has probably seen that. Obviously today we're going to focus on hurricanes. But the book covers everything from personal disasters, local disasters such as hurricanes, tornadoes, but also global disasters. In global disasters, I'm talking about things like nuclear war, solar superstorms, artificial intelligence, asteroid impacts. One of the things that Lily didn't mention is one of the areas that I was trained in was as a nuclear delivery pilot, a nuclear weapons pilot. Fortunately, they stopped having the Navy do that shortly after, maybe because of me, I don't know. But that's good. I kind of saw that as the ultimate disaster, and that's one of the reasons my path took the direction it did. The reason why I mention that is most global disasters, believe it or not, are completely preventable, or at least we can mitigate them. Because I didn't want to leave that on a depressing note, and that's my primary mission. Prevention first, yes, and then preparation. My goal, my mission is to help educate the public and governments on what we can do to stop some of these disasters from happening, partly because although they're preventable, surprise, surprise, there's not a lot of action in those areas. There's not a lot of funding. So my idea is to help wake people up. And if you want to know more, I did a TED Talk a few years back. The title was, How Do We Prevent Our Inevitable Extinction? Again, it ends on a positive note. Now, believe it or not, I'm an optimist. You're like, yeah, right. I believe that a positive mental attitude, not to mention a positive spiritual belief, will make you live longer. With that said, I'm also an engineer, and you don't want your airplane or elevator designed by an optimist. So a little pessimism sometimes helps, and that will also extend your lifespan. Next slide. When people think of disaster prepping, I think this is the picture they usually have. That's often the perception. The reality is quite different. 20 million Americans now are engaged in some form of disaster preparation, and that's doubled since 2017. We come from all walks of life. The bottom line is a starving person can't help another starving person, so a little disaster preparation goes a long way, can help your community and society in general. And preparation is motivated by everything from, like it says, protecting your family to saving the planet, reducing carbon footprint. What's kind of funny is if you ever go to a disaster preparation trade show, what you'll see is some very straight-laced environmentalist having a fun conversation with the guy on the left. And they're actually, they may have very divergent political views, but they have a common goal, and they're actually having fun. So it's it's awesome to watch this pull people together. Next, please. Now, disaster preparation comes in basically 3 levels. In the book, we cover all 3 levels. We really only have time to briefly hit level 1 and 2. Level 1 is it's budget survival. We're talking using things that you probably already have in some cases, dual-use items, or purchasing inexpensive items to help you get by. It's not comfortable. It is budget, but it will keep you surviving for at least a week or so. Water, food, etc. Level 2, a little bit more expensive, as you'd expect, but it includes fun things like refrigeration, a little bit of air conditioning. It takes a few more steps. It definitely takes a bit more work. Now, I'm not going to talk about level 3, but it's covered in the book. And, level 3, we're talking things like, solar panels, over the roof of your house and rain catchment and all those things. And people look at that and go, there's no way. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. But I do want to change your mind maybe just a tiny bit, because a lot of people look at that level 3 and they go, yeah, I'm going to buy a $30,000 bomb shelter and put it in my backyard. Of course, that wouldn't work here. But here's another thought. I try to go in a different direction. What if you took that $30,000 and you found a really cool piece of property in the hills or a mountain with a great view, or the desert, overlooking a lake, etc. And you purchase that property. Now you can take an RV or your RV and take it there as a kind of a survival refuge, right? And a vacation spot. And you could Airbnb it and pay for it. So you kind of want to think out of the box. Would you rather have a bomb shelter, one use, or maybe a really cool property with a RV or even a small cabin on it? Just trying to get people to expand their horizon a little bit. Back to hurricanes. Now, when we talk about hurricanes, we have to include not just wind and storm surge, but tornadoes and lightning. There's a lot that goes into that. So most of the stuff I'm going to talk about will be either specific to hurricanes, but a lot of it is general and ties in basically to any type of disaster. Okay, next slide. What do you think your most important survival tool is? Anybody want to take a stab at that? Anyone? Ferris Bueller? Bible? So a lot of people will often say us. They'll say it's our brain, etc. That's the most important asset. But I'm talking about actually a physical object, and this may surprise, and I might get some pushback on this, but the most important gadget you can have is this. It's your cell phone. And I know a lot of them are like, I was raised, I didn't need no stinking cell phone. I had to walk uphill both ways to school. I get it. But nowadays, if you go to the next slide, it's pretty powerful. Start with, of course, the ability to know when you need to evacuate. This is your primary information stream, news, etc. The next one. The next slide. Access, obviously being able to call the police, fire, medical, that's kind of critical, isn't it? Next one. First aid treatment. Do you realize you can load, the American Red Cross has a first aid ad, I'll have a picture of it later, you can load on the phone, allows you to do treatment right off the phone. That's really important to have. Next. Duh. Coordinate with family, friends. Let them know you're alive, or they let you know they're alive, and coordinate maybe places to meet as necessary. Next. GPS nav. Come on. A lot of people can't find their way home anymore without GPS. What you may not realize is the GPS actually works even if the cell phone towers are down, because GPS is tied to GPS satellites. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is that it will show you where you are, but to be able to do routing, to try to figure out where to go, those are maps. The maps are online, so you have to have cell phone service to access those maps to do the routing. But there's a workaround. You may not realize this, but all of the major nav apps have the ability to download the maps to your phone. Now, these maps are big. These are like gigabyte files, so you probably don't want to try to do the whole United States, but you could do like parts of Texas or the part you live in. Once you've downloaded those maps manually, you now have the ability to use those apps even when the cell phone towers are down to route. What you won't get, of course, is real-time traffic, because that does require access. Next. Take pictures of important documents. We talk about you want to have all your documents in one space so that you can gather them up if you have to evacuate. Well, another way to do that, or at least a backup, is to take pictures of the important ones, your insurance papers, your account information, those medical information. Now, as it's noted, important safety tip. If you do that, you need to create an encrypted file folder on your phone, because now you have a ton of private important information. And if you lose your phone or if it's stolen, they would have access to that. So make sure you don't do that unless you use an encrypted file folder. And if you need to figure out how to do that, ask a 10-year-old. They'll be able to show you. Next. This is a big one too. Obviously, before evacuating, or actually tomorrow, videotape your house and all your possessions. It doesn't have to be an Academy Award-winning presentation. Open drawers, look at all the for tools, your closet, video that, because obviously that's going to be important if there is a loss to have that video. That will override any kind of spreadsheet that you've tried to create. And finally, you can put a really cool digital version of, I don't know, some awesome type of disaster prep app, I'm just saying. Now, this is important. What if the cell phone towers are down? You're going, well, that's great, Dave, but you're only going to have a handful of things available once the cell phone towers are kaput, right? Turns out, next slide, please. This has only been around for about 18 months now, but they're now doing something called, you'll hear it called direct to cell. What they're doing is I think all the service providers now have the ability to link your phone to the satellite network. Currently, the satellite network is Starlink. If you have a premium plan, they probably already rolled it in. If they don't, you might have to pay $10 or $15 a month for that access. I'm telling you, I think that's a tremendous bang for the buck. What that means is cell phone towers are completely toast. And by the way, people don't realize that cell phone towers only have a maximum range of about 25 miles, and most much less than that. They're powered by the grid. I have a good friend who serviced the generators, the backup generators on those, and he said they only have at most about 48 hours of fuel. So if you have a massive failure, the power grid goes down, flooding, etc., they may not be able to get to those towers. Assuming the towers weren't damaged by the storm itself, they may not be able to get to those towers to refuel them. So within 48 hours, there's a good chance all of them will be going down. What this allows you to do is, now there are limitations. Right now, all you can do is text or use low data rate applications. But you can talk to anybody now. You don't need a cell phone tower. Now, you also, because it's satellite, your phone has to have at least some tiny bit of visibility to the sky. Since it's using a constellation, a satellite constellation, instead of, like Dish, you got to point it at one direction, this uses a constellation of literally tens of thousands of satellites. So even if you're inside, as long as you're probably near a window, or if you're in your car, it works fine. It's also handy if you're out driving out in the boonies and you got no signal, it immediately switches over to this satellite mode. Is it a lot to be spending $10 to $15 a month? Yeah, maybe, but think about it. The ability to be able to use your phone with no cell phone towers. And by the way, voice is coming. That's right behind. They're beefing up the network as we speak. And if you don't like Starlink or Elon Musk, there are going to be competitors coming out as well. Amazon is going to be releasing what they call LEO, stands for low Earth orbit, but that's still probably a couple years away. Let's see, make sure I didn't miss anything. Next. Now, critical, obviously, if you're going to be using these phones and it's that important, you've got to keep it charged. There's a lot of ways to do that. Some are extremely simple. This is probably one of the least expensive options. It's just a battery bank, but it's got a little solar panel on top. I will tell you, you're going to have to leave this out a lot, and it may only, after the initial charge, only charge one phone. The picture at the top is probably better. That's a small folding panel. Still, I think that's under 40 bucks. Maybe it's 30 something with a battery bank. That can keep two phones charged quite easily. So that's a good backup. Or if you want to go total gadget, you've got one that's a combination weather station. It's got a solar panel on it and a lithium battery in it, but it's also got a hand crank. So back to human energy. Next, please. Walkie-talkies. You can buy a set of walkie-talkies from Walmart for, I think, under 40 bucks. These ones are a little bit more advanced. They only have a range of about a half mile. They can come in handy, especially if you're evacuating in two cars. These ones are a little more advanced and a little bit more expensive, but they have the ability to monitor weather stations and emergency bands. You know, fire, ambulance, police. Police now are largely encrypted, so you can't listen in on those. But you can transmit, which is pretty wild. In fact, some of these actually have the ability to transmit on shortwave frequencies. You got to be careful with that because technically you have to have a ham radio license, so you don't want to get in trouble with the FCC. But these are pretty powerful little, and they have ranges, I think 4, 5, 6 miles. That may not be your thing, and that's okay. Next, please. Okay, when we got here, there was no fiber optic. Some of you are familiar. I'll leave it at that. It's tough to have a good internet connection out here. We immediately put in a Starlink. That's actually a picture of our, Starlink in our back deck. What I will tell you is this is using the same network that I just talked about, but now you have high-speed internet. We rode out Hurricane Beryl. We never lost a connection. Thought we were going to lose the dish a couple times, but we never lost the connection. There was a few times when there was just a massive downpour. And again, the reason why is it's not tracking one satellite, it's tracking multiple satellites at the same time. So that was worth every penny. Now, the real deal, though, is the one on the other side, the portable Starlink Mini on the right. That thing is a pretty amazing, I think it's probably the most bang for the buck in disaster preparation. Why? Actually, I have one right here just so you can see what it looks like. This little bitty dish, about the size of a laptop, uses about half the power of that thing. It's completely portable. You can power it from your cigarette lighter. You can power it from a battery. It has a little bit less bandwidth, as you can imagine. I mean, a little less speed, but it still can do 75 to 100 megabytes per second, which is enough to stream pretty much, high definition video. What's really powerful about it is, now you do have to, with Starlink, you usually have to buy the equipment up front. You don't rent it, you have to buy it up front. And let's say you get, I think the lowest plan is, for the Mini, it may be the only plan, $55 a month. But here's the cool thing. They allow you to pause it to put it in standby. So after you buy it, you put it in standby and they charge you $5 a month. Now here's the cool thing, or the cooler thing. In standby, it still works at an extremely low data rate, like half a megabyte per second. That allows you to make calls, text, and do very basic internet surfing. So you go on the internet and everything is lost and you turn your main plan back on for $55 a month. You can take this anywhere, throw it in your car, etc. It works in cars, it works on campsites, etc. So I think that's one of the, and by the way, I am not sponsored by any products. I don't even allow them to send me free stuff. So this is objective, but I am a little bit of a nerd, a geek, engineer. So cool concept, I believe. Let's see, next. Okay, big question. Should I stay or should I go? Anybody recognize what song that came from? Yeah, we're all old, come on. I think it's a Clash, right? Now, some of it is pretty obvious. Is it safe to stay? Well, look, if you're in the center cone of a Cat 5, duh, that's pretty obvious. You're out of there. Also, if you have some medical conditions or physical conditions, or one of your family members do, there's no sense in taking those chances. You need to leave as soon as possible and try to beat the rush. But here's the big one. If things change, will you be able to evacuate later? That's a tough question, especially those of us who've lived in either Galveston area or Bolivar. Quick story. I had a good friends of ours, and he built a beautiful beachfront home. It was down in the Gilcrest area. And he had just finished the home, built to code. He had put a lot of extras to make it strong. He was in the construction industry himself. And there was a hurricane coming in. It was a Cat 1, but it was expected to become a Cat 2. And he decided they were going to ride it out. He said, this house is built strong enough, it should be able to survive the winds of a Cat 2. Well, he said, I think it was a day or two before the hurricane was supposed to make landfall, he got kind of a funny feeling in the pit of his stomach. And he said the wind and waves weren't that bad, but he said the water was just starting to rise. Not a lot of waves, but it was rising. So he decided, what the heck. So grabbed the dogs and his wife, and they decided to leave. He said even as he was leaving, he was watching the water rise on Highway 87, which for those of you who don't know or we're streaming here, that's the only road out of the Bolivar Peninsula. The only other way is the ferry. Well, that hurricane ended up being Hurricane Ike. Hurricane Ike didn't read the building codes. When he came back a week or two later, there was no evidence that his house had ever existed. No pilings, no concrete, nothing. So what I'm saying is you don't want to bet your life on a prediction. Now, the prediction of either the meteorologist, but more importantly, the prediction of what a hurricane can withstand. By the way, hurricane, as everybody in here knows, Hurricane Ike was listed as a Cat 2, but it had a Cat 5 storm surge. Another one I want to briefly mention is Hurricane Otis. Most of you have probably never heard of Hurricane Otis. It happened in 2023 off the western coast of Mexico. Hurricane Otis was predicted to come ashore. It was a tropical storm. They said it'll probably get up to a Cat 1. 24 hours, it went from a Cat 1 to a Cat 5 hurricane. They had less than 24 hours to evacuate. It was catastrophic. What was particularly terrifying is that the meteorologists did not predict this. Now, since then, they've built a lot of this into current models, hurricane models, and they really have been excellent. Meteorologists are getting better and better. But the bottom line is, if it's coming ashore as a 1 or you think it's a 2, plan on at least 1 level above, maybe 2. By the way, for the local area, for the people in Galveston, Hurricane Hal, some of you guys are familiar with, is a great source of information. Going the other way towards Beaumont, we often use Greg Bostwick. Many of you are familiar with him. Between the two of those, you have incredible information. These are people who actually live here and have been here for a while and know the area. Okay, next. Now, how do you decide? I know this looks engineering. How do you decide whether it's time to go or stay? Well, when I did the global disasters, and I ranked them 1 through 7 in the book, and we're not going to cover that, but I used basically 2 variables: consequence, probability. What is the probability that a disaster will happen in your lifetime? And the other one is consequence, and if it does, how bad will it be? Well, Brian Duff, again, my technical editor, this is the Army Ranger, he added another variable that he had used, vulnerability. Because when you're talking global disaster, it's pretty straightforward, but when you're talking of a local disaster, hurricanes, tornadoes, it depends on your particular situation. So in this one, I broke it down. Let's see if we got and the assumption is, and I'm using a 0 to 5 scale. You can use a 1 to 10, or however you want to use it, but 0 being no probability, no consequence, 5 being maximum. If you live in South Dakota, probability of a hurricane is 0. You don't need to talk about anything else. 0 times anything is 0, so there's no risk. Gulf Coast on a house built to current standards, and this is ballparking it, okay? I'm saying about a 3 out of 5, 60% chance, same with the consequence. And that would apply to all of these on the Gulf Coast. But it's saying the vulnerability of a house on pilings built well, still maybe 3, 50-50. And we're talking about a major hurricane hitting head on. Now, if you're in a mobile home, I'm sorry. A mobile home is not going to survive the wind. It's not going to survive a storm surge. Maximum, basically, and you can see almost double the consequence. RV, but RV in this case, we're assuming that it can and will be moved. It's actually lower than a house because you can get it out of the hurricane zone. Something important. Now, this is just an example, guys. Bottom line is when you are looking at any disaster, it could be house fire or anything else, this kind of gives you a way to intellectually kind of plot out what might happen and how dangerous it is in particular for you. Okay, I think next. When do you decide? When do you decide to evacuate? I want to share a little bit of a story. I had a good friend. We went to college together. We were roommates in flight school. Great guy. Years later, after we were both operating the fleet, I got word that he was on a night low-level mission and his jet hit the ground. No ejection attempted. I did a little research and discovered that 60% of all tactical jet fatalities are pilots literally flying into the ground. They wait too long to pull that ejection handle. Later as an F-18 instructor, I told my students that you're not setting foot in that jet until you decide when you're going to eject. Right now, before we get into the jet, I need to know, under what circumstances are you going to pull that handle? Why? Because when the adrenaline is flowing, hey, it increases our reaction speed, our strength, our pain threshold, but it doesn't facilitate rational thought. You know, we've all been there. Adrenaline flowing, you're probably not thinking very well. When I've had flight emergencies, I've noticed my ability to multiply is reduced. I mean, even simple tasks. So what I tell them is, I need to know exactly when you are planning to pull that handle. And I need you to think of that every time you get in the jet. Another reason to do that is because we're both in the jet together, and if he pulls the handle, I go too. So it's kind of important to know what he's thinking, or she's thinking. By the way, if you see Jim Cantori of the Weather Channel broadcasting from your front yard, you probably waited too long, just saying. So all I'm saying is, please take a little time when the adrenaline isn't flowing and just sit down and think, okay, under what circumstances will I evacuate? And once you've decided, stick with it. Don't modify that plan, okay? And then obviously you're going to have a plan to go with that. Next, please. Okay, we're going to briefly talk about evacuation, then we're also going to talk about what to do if it's not so extreme that you can stay or you can come back. The first question is, where are you going to go? I mean, that's kind of a big one. If you're planning on doing a hotel thing, make sure you book it in advance and pretty far away. You know what happens. My wife and I actually were in the Katrina evacuation. Were we in New Orleans? No, we were stupid. We were in Texas heading back to Tennessee and weren't paying attention and got to enjoy a full-scale evacuation. It's a nightmare. It's not a good idea. It doesn't speak much for my intelligence. We're a little more careful now. The question of where you're going to stay, obviously it could be family, it could be friends, it could be an ex. That might be trading one catastrophic disaster for another. And after that, documents, we talked about that. But make sure you have documents ready at hand so you can scoop them up and put them in a bag and go. And or take pictures of them, but again, make sure you encrypt the file folder you put them in there, video your stuff. And then you'll frequently hear us talk about bug-out bags. It's a common term in disaster preparation. By the way, they can also be bug-in bags, just kind of a central repository for stuff, even if you're not going to bug out, but you can find. And this is ours, and it probably has more things than you really need, but I'm a gadget guy. It's like, oh, that's cool. But basics, water, toilet paper, I mean, things that you need if you hit the road or even if you stay. I'm going to cover some of these a little bit later, but the bottom line is you need to personalize that. You need to create one. You can buy these things pre-built online, sure, but honestly, you can probably make your own, get a nice backpack, less expensive and more personalized. Let's see, next. Car. This is basic stuff. I mean, I know a lot of you are like, duh. Every car should probably have a fire extinguisher. Now, home fire extinguishers, they usually recommend a 5 or 10 pound one. But these little bitty ones, they're like the size of a paint can. They're perfect for a car. They're also good to put one in maybe every room of your house. They're inexpensive. You buy them in packs. Put them in the closet of your bedroom, kitchen, etc., and car. A toolkit, a flashlight. I like the flashlights that make you look like a total geek, you know, the one you put on your head so your hands are free. Obviously, a small first aid kit. It doesn't have to be your main one. I have a gas can there. You don't want to be driving around all the time with 5 gallons of gas in your trunk. So you want to keep it in a garage or shed or somewhere outside. If you don't have access to that, get an empty one and throw that in your trunk. At least when the time comes, you can fill it up at a gas station while you're filling up your tank. I also have jumper cables are great. Yes?
If you have a gas can and you have a car with no lid, you've got to have the funnel. So you need to make sure you carry a funnel.
Yes. Yes, I like the gas cans that actually have the funnel built into them, but you're right. You'll have to have a funnel to fill it. The drawback with just jumper cables is that you got to have another car. So these things, these little batteries, they're lithium battery packs with jumpers. Now, we actually used one of these. We bought one, didn't think we'd have to use it, did the classic, you fly out of town, come back in the airport, and your battery's dead. The battery was getting old anyway. We jumped it, started perfectly. It was awesome. It really only has maybe 2 or 3 jumps in it. But here's the important part. When you do that, immediately take it, plug it into the cigarette lighter, and get it recharged. That way, if you have to stop the engine later, you'll have another jump. The other thing it will do is has tons of power to recharge phones, cell phones. Next. Okay. Now, for those of you in the audience who are like, if you die with the most toys, you win, this is a ridiculous picture. But for a lot of people, as you know, they're tool adverse. So these are some very basic tools. The single 2 most important ones are duct tape and WD-40. You can fix anything with that. If it's not moving and it should, you squirt it with WD-40. If it's moving and it shouldn't, you tape it with duct tape. Done. You do want some basic tools. Next. Okay, now I'm going to go through a couple hacks. Some very simple ones. Now, most of these assume that you have a house, and some of them will actually work in an apartment as well. But this one I thought was very, very simple and very brilliant. All doors have screws that connect the hinges into the door frame. But obviously, a strong enough wind or even an intruder can blow the entire door and door frame out. So what you do is you take one of those screws out, you go to your local hardware store, you find one that has identical threads, identical width, a diameter, and it's about 2.5 times longer. And then one by one you replace these. What that does is it drills the screw through the door frame into the stud that the door frame is attached to. That radically increases the strength of the door frame assembly. And do the same obviously with the striker plate. Next. Now this I don't have, but I thought was very clever. Doorcade, and it got really good reviews. Now this only works on inward swinging doors. Most entry doors are inward swinging. At the beach, they swing out often. But basically you have 2 connections that are bolted into the frame of again with long screws, into the door frame and into the studs. And then you put this little barrier. When you don't use it, you take it off, put it in the closet, and you flip them down, and they're almost invisible. You really don't notice them very well. At least in the videos, it did a tremendous increase in what that door could take before it gave out. So the last one was securing the door frame. This one is actually securing the door itself. Next. Now this we do have. This, again, very, very clever system. If you're going to put shutters, if you don't have automated shutters or mechanical shutters, obviously everybody puts plywood up over their windows. But that, cut it, and then you got to screw or nail that thing in, and then you got to tear it back down again. This is doing it in advance. Yes, you get the plywood. You get the plywood and you cut it to the shape of every window and every door. That also means you can probably get the plywood, because if you wait, yeah, you're fighting for those scraps. So you get the plywood, you cut it down, and you put these lag bolts, about probably 6 or 8, depending on the size of the door or the window, around the door frame. So they're permanently in there. You screw them all the way in so you don't even hardly notice them, and you can paint over them. When it's time, guess what? You back them out with a driver. You take that piece of plywood, which you've already cut perfect holes that fit them, they're a bit bigger. You slip them over those lag bolts. You put that little thing, that little black thing, that's the patented device. It's just very hard plastic. slides down over the top of it. Actually, I think it's has fiber inside of it. And then you drive those bolts back in to pull the shutter against your house. Very clever and very inexpensive. It does require doing all of this in advance. But I thought, and that's exactly what we did for all of our windows and doors. Next.
Dave,
Yes.
how thick does the plywood, should it be?
Most people would, for here, most people would say 3/4 inch plywood. Actually, it comes now in, nothing is 3/4, it's 0.7, you get the idea. Lower wind areas, you might be able to get away with a little bit less, but 3/4 is recommended. Now this is level 2. I remember everything so far has been level 1. Level 2, if you don't have impact windows, hurricane windows and doors, this is an option. It's not, obviously it's not quite the same as impact windows, but it does a tremendous job. You're basically putting an 8 millimeter film over your windows. And you can see the picture. It seems insane. How's 8 millimeters gonna keep my window from smashing? It won't. It'll smash, but it won't cave in. It's been able to stop 2x4s at 25 miles an hour, etc. The cost, and the reason why I put it in the level 2 category is it's about $6 to $15 per square foot to have it installed. But if you're a good DIYer, you could probably do it yourself for quite a bit less. The film is not inexpensive, but I think that's probably one of the simplest and cheapest way to help fortify your home. Next. Okay, water. We can live 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water. What a lot of people don't, and I'm sure most of the people here understand this, but that hot water tank you've got in your house, I mean, as long as you don't have instant-on hot water heater, that carries 30, 40, 50 gallons of water, drinkable water in it. When you lose water pressure, that tank, if it's sized correctly to the number of occupants in your residence, should supply about a week of drinking water. Not flushing, not cleaning, but drinking water. You tap it there's a little valve at the bottom of every hot water heater tank, but they often don't come with a knob on it. So you'll have to buy something to fit it, or you can usually open it with vice grips and drain that. If you haven't drained it in a long time, when you drain it, you're probably going to get some sediment coming out of the bottom of it. It's okay. I mean, it's obviously sterile. Don't do the valve at the top. That is the pressure release valve. You will scald yourself. How do I know? Now, you're still probably going to want to stockpile water. I like these 2.5 gallon plastic jugs because they have a spigot at the bottom and they have a handle, so they're easy to move around. And 2.5 gallons is a reasonable amount of weight. They're also stackable. I think you can stack 3 high before they collapse and flood your floor. How do I know that? And then, kind of an extreme case, we have something called the Life Straw. There's a couple manufacturers that make that, but this is the one that we have. And basically, you just stick that in the questionable water and you suck the water through. And it pulls it through a filter. It's supposed to wipe out 99.99% of bacteria, viruses. You get the idea. It's kind of a last-ditch thing. Another one that's important to have is some type of disinfectant. You can use chlorine. You can use iodine. I like this. I think it's called, portable aqua, because it's a 2-step process. The first one, you drop it in, and it's iodine, and it kills everything in there. And it tastes deliciously like iodine. The second tablet you drop in neutralizes the iodine, so it doesn't taste quite as awesome. Next slide, please. This one, again, very, very clever. I think most of us have heard, during the disaster, fill your bathtub full of water. Why? Because you need to flush your toilet. You need water to flush your toilet. Well, this concept is a bladder that goes in your bathtub. The drawback of just filling your bathtub is obviously your bathtub's probably not that clean, not that sterile, even if you clean it. Plus, drains often leak a little bit. Over time, you'll lose some of the water out. This is a bladder. You basically fill it directly from the faucet, cap it. It has a pump on it, so you can pump the water out. It will keep the water clean. Now, if you're going to use it for drinking water, which you could, you still probably want to use disinfectant. But overall, the water is very, very clean. And it's called WaterBob. Next. Level 2. Where do you get water to flush your toilet? An inflatable hot tub. Yes, these things cost $350, $400, big box stores. You can get them online. We have one. They actually work pretty good. 2 years, It hasn't popped a leak or anything. Be careful, when they're filled with water, they weigh about 2,000 pounds. So make sure whatever you're putting on can support that. But 250 gallons, you got all the water you need to flush toilets, you got all the water you need to clean, hygiene, etc. And in a pinch, you could use it for drinking water, but again, you want to treat it with some disinfectant before you do that. Let's see, make sure I didn't miss that. Next. What goes in must come out. Now, if you got a septic system, not a big deal. But if you're on city or municipal sewer, when you lose power, guess what happens? You know, eventually those pumps quit. Gravity will work for a while, but eventually the pumps quit, especially in city environments. When that happens, backups will happen. So this is septic backup or a backup to septic that backed up. These are very simple ideas. It's a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket that you put this type of a lid on with a bag and maybe some cat litter to throw in there after. People use them frequently for camping, but it's a great thing to have as an emergency backup. Next. First aid kit. Get a good first aid kit. If you have one, go through it, make sure it hasn't expired or somebody didn't take all the bandages out, especially the sunburn stuff. And I mentioned this before, but get there's several of them available, but the American Red Cross emergency treatment app is free, and it's very good. In fact, you can actually schedule first aid training on that app. First aid training with Red Cross, I think, runs about $40. You can do it in person, but you now can actually do it online. I also recommend as a backup the EMS field guide. It fits in a pocket. It's very small. So a backup to your phone, and you can just throw it in your first aid kit. Prescription drugs, aside from maybe pain meds, most physicians will understandably allow you to do an extended prescription so you can keep some on standby. You can store most unopened prescription drugs in a refrigerator or freezer. Not liquid ones, but regular pills. Don't do opened ones, because what happens is moisture gets inside, you put it in the refrigerator, it condenses on the inside of the bottle, water destroys drugs very rapidly. And make sure that check with your physician to make sure that drug is okay being frozen. There's very few that they're sensitive to that. Next. Okay, the whole section on food, multiple chapters. Can't fit that, but hit a couple high points. Yes, fat is your friend. Why? It has more calories, 9 calories per gram versus only 4 for carbs and protein. Less waste. Sorry to say that, but carbs have fiber, protein and fat do not. Why is that important? Toilet paper, flushing, that could be an issue. And see if I can read myself. Blood sugar. Carbs, at least simple carbs, spike your blood sugar. And what that causes you to be hungry faster. That's not a good thing when you're trying to maintain on food. Obviously, high caloric content combined with that allows you to have a lot more food in a much smaller area. Next. So what are you looking for? You're looking for 4 things. High calorie, low carb, we covered that. Often you'll see these things listed as keto, even if you're not on a keto diet. And by the way, in a survival situation, dieting is a dumb idea, okay? If they list keto, it probably meets those requirements. Compact, long, unrefrigerated life, obviously, is very important. And you want something that doesn't require any or very little preparation. Next. Spam. I did that mostly for shock value, but Spam does fit all the bills. You don't want to see, by the way, how it's made. But, okay, I said you can live 3 weeks without food, maybe be a little longer, 3 days without water, but only about 3 minutes without losing consciousness. So air is important. Now, why am I talking about that with hurricanes? The chances of house fires actually increases dramatically due to things like lightning, down power lines, people using generators, etc. So we talked about having those little fire extinguishers. If you have a house that's on pilings and you only have 1 staircase, probably a good idea to have a rope ladder. If you have a 2-story house, same thing. Again, those little flashlights. Now, as far as the oxygen, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. One of the things I noticed recently, I don't know if you've seen this, but on the West Coast, there have been some of these giant chemical plant fires. Have you seen that? In Los Angeles, they had to evacuate 50,000 people for a while. Then there was another one, I think, up in Oregon or Washington. Yesterday, there was a massive fire at a recycling center. Just the whole sky was pitch black. So there's a lot of situations where you have toxic air. Quite a few years ago, I was in Finland, and I was test flying one of the first F-18s that they had built there. And flight went great. They did an awesome job. When we finished, I went out with another guy. I always like to kind of taste the local cuisine. So we went to a small restaurant, and I asked, what's your specialty? And they said, reindeer stew. I said, count me in. They brought reindeer stew out to us. We ate it. It was absolutely delicious. So if you ever go to Finland, try the reindeer stew. Except we said, that was so good that we're going to come back tomorrow and have some more. And our waitress was like, she paused, and she's like, I don't recommend that. And we're like, why? And she goes, do you remember Chernobyl? And we're like, yeah. Well, the fallout pattern actually went over where the reindeer live, and some of the reindeer are still a tiny bit radioactive. Would have been good to know before the first meal. Apparently, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is based on a true story. Now, the reason I mention this is because it is important to kind of look at where you are in relation to things like chemical plants. You want to be aware of wind patterns. Chernobyl was hundreds of miles away from where we were. And despite that, they were still, and this was quite a few years ago, they were still under the influence. One other question. A lot of people ask, hey, these little bottles of oxygen, what's up with these? Even when they're full, they weigh almost nothing. They come in multiple sizes. When you look at house fires, the number one cause of death by far isn't that they burn up, they die of smoke inhalation. They lose consciousness, and it's all over. And that's building fires as well. I don't know if you've ever done this, but you hear about the tragedy of an entire family perishing in a house fire, and some part of you is like, why didn't they just get out? Well, here's the trick. During a fire, obviously it produces a tremendous amount of carbon monoxide. It also, any type of plastic produces cyanide compounds. Those bond with the red blood cells in your body, and once they're bonded, they are no longer able to pick up oxygen or release oxygen. So basically you suffocate, and it can happen very, very quickly. I've had people say, well, I think I could hold my breath. Try it. Hold your breath, get on your hands and knees blindfolded, because it probably will at night with no power, and try to get out of your house on one breath of air. It's not going to happen. So these things are actually designed for hiking, fitness training, etc. You can get them at any, I think you can even get them at Walmart. They only have a couple minutes of air. You basically pull the trigger, it's almost pure oxygen, you suck it in. By the way, because it's pure oxygen, don't let it get too close to the fire itself. Oxygen does feed fire. But a few minutes might be enough to get you and your family out of a fire. So we keep these in our bedside tables. And a lot of people go, I don't want oxygen anywhere near in case there's a fire. You know what? Your hairspray can is a lot more explosive than this would be. I've also been asked, well, if I drive my car off a bridge accidentally into a lake or river and it sinks, could I use this? I'm a scuba diver. This does not have a regulator. It will not work underwater. Now, you could take a couple breaths before the car fills with water, but honestly, I just recommend driving your car only into the shallow end of swimming pools. Next. Okay, power. Power. Electricity is really the elephant in the room. It's the largest part of the book. And by the way, for those of you who don't want to hear about electrons, this might be a good time to check your social media on your phone. The bottom line is you want at least enough power to charge your phone. But I have this as level 1+. This is a step up and still reasonably inexpensive. Some of you may remember the old UPSs. They're uninterruptible power supplies. They've been around for decades that you'd set near your desktop computer so that if you lost power, you'd have time to shut it down. Inside, they just have these big old lead-acid batteries, old generation technology, but they're pretty inexpensive. You can get these things for $60, $70, $80. That's why I have the Plus. If you tie that to a small portable solar panel, maybe 100 watts, the combination will not only charge your phone, but you should be able to keep your laptop charged. You can, maybe a small fan. If I use a CPAP, it might get that CPAP through the evening. So that's probably the least expensive way to get basic power. It's not going to provide, it's not going to keep your refrigerator going, and it's not going to do any air conditioning. Next. Okay, now we're stepping up to level 2. Yes, this is more expensive. Now we're talking about gas generators. Gas generators are pretty impressive, even the small ones. But they're fuel hungry. They go through gas real fast. And once you've done that, of course, you're stuck. What you want to do in a perfect world is you want to pair them with the portable power stations. Portable power stations are just lithium battery packs. They can hold a tremendous amount of electricity and release it. But their weakness is, yeah, okay, you used it to power your refrigerator for 8 hours, and now it's dead, and there's no way to recharge it. But if you put them together, they make a pretty impressive combination. We're talking the ability to probably keep a refrigerator operating, and I'll show you well, here's the magic. You run your generator during the daytime, and actually, I'll come to that in a minute. I have a good diagram that will put everybody else to sleep. The refrigeration and some air conditioning, you think, well, that's a luxury. No, actually, it's not. When I was strike ops in the Gulf, I was assigned to the USS LaSalle. That was the flagship, and it was parked in Bahrain. Bahrain gets hot in the summertime. I used to run on the pier all the time. I was in pretty good shape. Went out to run one time, and the temperature was 113 degrees. But I thought, no big deal, because there was a nice 15, 20 knot wind blowing. Piece of cake. What I didn't know was the humidity was 80%. And if you look at, you know what a heat index is? That's where you temperature and the humidity, put them together. The heat index was 140 degrees. The normal NOAA chart only goes to 137, because who'd be stupid enough to be outside in 140 degrees? What I didn't understand, basic physics, is that once you pass about 106 degrees heat index, the wind no longer cools you by evaporative cooling. It's a convection oven. It actually adds heat. Well, despite that, I went out on that pier and I ran 2, maybe 300 feet, came back. The reason why I say that, and I'm kind of make fun of that, but if you look at the #1 fatality for storm-related disasters, it's drowning, not surprising. But the #1 fatality or source of death for all weather-related disasters that covers everything is actually heat. Heat stroke, heat exhaustion. That's what kills the most people. So air conditioning is actually important. In fact, I would put air conditioning, long term, especially if you're older or younger or you have a medical condition, I would put that higher than keeping your refrigerator cool. Because stuff in your refrigerator, you're going to eat it, you're not going to be able to replace it, now you're going to be using your normal stockpile of non-refrigerated foods. And when I say air conditioning, next slide, I'm really talking about maybe air conditioning one room. Even if you have central air, you may want to buy a small, efficient air conditioner that you can put in one room and at least keep one room or one part of your house cool. In this example, this is how you would use it. You take your small portable generator, and you can get these things $500, $600, but important caveat. If you're going to use a gas-powered portable generator with one of these portable power stations, that's the lithium battery pack, make sure it's an inverter generator. Inverter generators produce much cleaner power, and some of the portable power stations can't handle dirty power. So you got to make, and you'll pay a little bit extra, but we're still talking $500, $600 for these generators. What you're doing is you're using it to power your coffee maker in the morning, charge your laptop, run your air conditioner during the daytime, and at the same time charge your battery pack, your portable power station. Next slide. Then at night, you turn the generator off, you save gas, and you use the portable power station to run everything, including, and the load should be much lower at night anyway. Obviously, how you size these to work together, that's a bit more complicated. The book goes into some detail. And if you want to make it even sweeter, the next slide, add a solar panel, maybe a 200-watt solar panel. That charges the portable power station even when you maybe run out of gas for the generator. But it's a great combination. Next slide. Now, you go, well, I want to power my entire central air. Well, that is an issue for most generators. Usually they'll tell you you have to have a giant fixed non-portable generator, like a Generac, to power a central air system. But there is a way around that. The reason you have to do that isn't because now let's take a 3 or 4 ton air conditioner. It's not that they pull maybe 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 watts. A generator could handle that, but it can't handle the starting load. When the compressor starts on your generator, your starting load goes 2 or 3 times. That spike kills the generator immediately. What you can do is you can buy something called a soft starter. What that does is it tells the compressor, it ramps it up slower. It's supposed to be easier on the compressor, and it cuts the amperage down dramatically. They cost about $300, plus, of course, the cost of installation. We put them on both of ours. I tried a different model. Both of them burned out within a year. This one has continued running, so I will recommend that so far. Now, you're going to have an electrician because we're talking a 240 circuit, but a way that you can actually, no kidding, power your central air. Next. Protection. I'm going to tell you, there is a chapter on firearms. I'm not going to cover firearms in this. We're in Texas. Most people have them or know how to get them. The reason why I'm going to talk about some non-lethal ones is because there are people who obviously aren't comfortable, don't want to carry a firearm, and that's fine. We also know people, everybody knows at least one person who probably shouldn't have one. The chances of a catastrophic disaster actually increase instead of decrease. So just briefly cover these. These are some quick and easy ones. Pepper spray. Come on, pepper spray, as actually police use them, that tells you a lot. Pepper spray is very, very effective. The little bitty ones are small enough you can put them in a pocket or purse. I'm not being sexist here, but I think all women should carry them. Our daughter has it attached to her keychain. Brilliant, because that's what she has when she gets in and out of her car. Yeah, I can see a few back there. Now, step up from that, bear spray, or actually they have some that are built for houses. These are much bigger, have much longer streams. They're less likely to spray back in your face. Some of them have a gel. Very effective. I've had hunters tell me that they're more effective than a pistol with a bear attack. The pistol just ticks off the bear. Tasers. Tasers. Now, this one is actually a combination flashlight taser, which I kind of like. Requires, if you touch somebody, it hurts. If you hold it against them, they'll usually collapse. It will take them out. But you have to be there. It's pretty tight quarters. I will tell you, be careful with these. You can get them for $30 online. In our experience, they only last a few years, so check them out regularly. Be ready to get another one. Next slide. Step up from that, level 2, and we're almost done. A gas-propelled taser. They're good for 10, 12, maybe 15 feet. Fires a couple barbs, does the same thing. You don't have to get as close. Quite a bit more expensive. Police use them. This is kind of a residential, simpler version. And something new that I had never seen before until recently is gas-propelled pepper balls. It's basically a paint gun that shoots balls with pepper spray in them or tear gas. That's got to be fun. Now, I have to warn you, not just these, but pepper spray, tasers, whether they're fire or not, are restricted in some locations. So be careful that you understand the law. You'd think they wouldn't be because they're non-lethal, but be careful before you use these. Next. All right. I'm done. Just wanted to point out, if you order a print or digital copy of Disaster Prepping for Dummies, send a note to me at that email. There's emails in the back of the book. And if you do that within 10 days, I'm going to still donate $10 to the church and the outreach programs they have here. By the way, you don't have to read the book cover to cover. I've had a lot of people go, well, I wanted to put a review in, but I haven't read the whole thing. You don't have to. Dummies books are designed so that each chapter stands on its own. Just read the chapter that is of interest or it applies to you. And when you read at least one chapter, you can actually write a review, unless you didn't like it, and then don't write any review until you've read the whole book, including the index. Kidding. By the way, if you don't do nonfiction books, I understand. I did a trilogy previously, and this isn't just a random promotion. The trilogy is what I used that advisory board that Lily told you about, the astronauts, the astrophysicists, and we took the top global disasters and made them the nemesis in each book. But also we had realistic solutions to those disasters. So if you want to get your information in a fiction format, there you go. It was a USA Today bestseller. And if you don't read books at all, we got the TED Talk. And that's all I've got. I think we'll probably wrap this up, but I'll stick around for questions. And like I said, if you don't mind signing that little form.